Hi, my name's Sadie. 3 weeks ago, my stepmother slapped me across the face at a family party. My stepsister clapped. My father just took another bite of his steak. That was the moment I stopped pretending I was part of their legacy and started reclaiming what they tried to steal. They'd been planning it for years, erasing my name from photos, calling my home theirs, drafting a deed behind my back. They thought I'd stay silent, but what kind of family applauds your humiliation and still expects you to hand over the keys? Would you? They thought the silence meant I surrendered. What they didn't know was, I was just getting started. I hadn't even stepped fully into the yard when I realized something was off. Not the kind of off where you forget someone's name or burn the casserole. This was practiced. It was polished, like everything had been rehearsed down to the last smile. A woman I didn't recognize was standing at a makeshift welcome table by the hedges, flipping through a binder. She looked up, held out a plastic tag with a number on it, and chirped, "Guest 18!" I blinked at her. "I'm Sadie. This is my house." She hesitated, her eyes darting back to the sheet. "Oh, right. They just gave me the list." Of course they did. I took the tag and clipped it to my shirt without a word. Finn, my old shepherd mix, stayed by my side, ears twitching, already sensing the shift in my breathing. We moved forward into the maze of white tents and twinkle lights, the kind they rent for suburban weddings and neighborhood galas. I had approved the invoice for it all 3 weeks ago. Paid it, too. The first thing I saw was the photo wall, a 10-foot montage framed in fairy lights titled Kalin Family Legacy. Picture after picture, graduations, holiday dinners, backyard barbecues. There was Leora, my stepsister, front and center in a cheer uniform. Valora, her mother, posing in every shot like she invented family unity. My father, Harlan, smiling next to Leora's son, holding a fish. I stared at it for too long. I was nowhere to be found. A woman brushing past behind me whispered to her husband, "Is she one of the cousins?" I turned. "I'm the daughter," I said evenly. She didn't respond. Just sipped her wine and walked away. A hand touched my arm. I flinched before realizing it was Valora. "There you are," she beamed. "Come sit. We're about to start the toast." She guided me, palm barely brushing my elbow, toward a folding chair pushed off to the side, behind the buffet line and dangerously close to the portable toilets. Finn laid down beneath the chair immediately, his chin flat on his paws, eyes on everything. That dog had always known how to read a room better than most people. Valora took the mic with the confidence of a woman used to being listened to. 15 years ago, she began, I walked into this family with nothing but hope in my heart and love to give. Today, we celebrate a legacy, not just mine or my daughter's, but one that includes every single one of you. She went on, thanking her husband, Harlan, who nodded solemnly, and Leora, who tossed her hair like she was posing for a magazine cover. She listed every niece, nephew, second cousin, and neighbor. She thanked the florist by name. Not once did she mention me. And finally, she said, smiling, we have one more surprise. Sadie, sweetheart, could you come join us up front? A few heads turned. The clinking of forks on plates slowed. I stood, slowly, brushing imaginary lint from my dress. Valora turned toward the crowd. As you all know, we've been trying to create meaningful traditions for our children, something lasting. And Sadie has a beautiful cabin in the mountains. This very place. I felt my stomach drop. It would mean the world to us if she made it official, if she gifted the property as part of the Kalin family legacy. There were gasps. A few murmured, "That's so generous." Someone actually clapped. I opened my mouth, unsure if I could even form words. Before I could speak, Valora added, I mean, she doesn't have a family of her own. No husband, no children. It's not like she needs it. Harlan didn't flinch. He just cut into his steak. I felt my spine go rigid. No, I said, my voice clearer than I expected. This house is mine. Valora's expression froze. Excuse me? It's not yours, and it never will be. A hush rippled through the tent. Valora stepped closer. You ungrateful... and then her palm struck my cheek. The sound cracked through the silence like lightning. For a moment, I didn't move. My skin burned, my pulse was in my ears, and then Liora began to clap. One slow, deliberate clap, then another. Then more people joined, uncertain but obedient. Polite applause. The kind you give a PTA speech, the kind you offer a bad toast to avoid making it awkward. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just placed my hand gently against my cheek, not to soothe it, but to anchor myself in the moment. No one moved to help me. Not one person. I walked away from the tent. Finn rose immediately and followed, his gait matching mine, quiet and steady. We passed the dessert table, the photo wall, the welcome sign with its glittering font. At the edge of the yard, I stopped. The trees rustled faintly. Somewhere behind me, Leora's voice resumed over the mic. I didn't listen. I whispered to myself, "Remember this." Because I would. Maybe this time they'd see me. Maybe this time I wouldn't have to disappear to be respected. That thought lingered like a fog in my kitchen 3 weeks before the party, as the morning sun pushed through the window and landed on the corner of the countertop where Finn had just knocked over his water bowl again. He did that when he was thirsty and annoyed I hadn't taken him out yet. I mopped the spill absently with a dish towel, thinking about groceries, deadlines, and the faint ache behind my right eye. Then my phone pinged. It was a simple notification. New email. Kalin Family Legacy. I clicked it open and stared. The subject line read, Kalin Family Legacy, 15 years together. That was it. No hi Sadie, no dear family, no warm greeting. The body of the message was 3 short sentences. Join us for a celebration of love and togetherness. Saturday, 4 p.m. Dress, casual. At the bottom, just warm regards, Valora Harlan. And beneath that, the bold, blocky signature Valora used for her brand email blasts. Heart Home, legacy coaching for women who lead. My thumb hovered over the trash icon, but something stopped me. I scrolled up again, reading the message a second slower time. No address, no personal note, not even a, hope to see you there, Sadie. It wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. And it wasn't the first time. I sat down on the edge of the couch, towel still clutched in one hand, phone in the other. Finn nudged my leg with his nose, sensing the shift in my energy. I gave his head a quick rub and stood up again, pacing. A part of me, the part that still clung to the idea that maybe they just forgot to see me properly, needed to know for sure. So I called Valora. She picked up on the second ring, voice sugar sweet. Oh, Sadie, I was just thinking about you. Isn't that wild? I didn't answer right away. I got your invitation. It didn't have my name on it. A pause, not even a full second, but enough. Oh, honey, that's totally a glitch. You know how those mass mailers go. Sometimes the personalization tag doesn't populate. Honestly, tech these days, right? She laughed lightly, as if we were old friends catching up, and not 2 women maintaining a cold ceasefire under a roof I bought. I said nothing. Let the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. She barreled on. It's just a casual thing, backyard, string lights, some finger food, a couple speeches, very low-key. You don't have to bring anything. Her tone carried that fake relaxed drawl women use when they want you to know they're controlling the narrative, the kind that says, I planned this without you, and I want you to be grateful I'm inviting you at all. I'll be there, I said. My voice sounded more neutral than I expected. Wonderful, she chirped, already moving on in her mind. See you then. We hung up without any real goodbye. I stared at the screen for another minute before tossing the phone onto the couch. Later that afternoon, I pulled out the wooden box where I kept photos from years past. I hadn't opened it in months. It smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Inside were stacks of memories. Pictures of me and Leora as teenagers, my mom holding Finn when he was a puppy, Dad fixing the porch railing back when he still noticed if it was broken. I chose 6 photos carefully. One of me and Leora at a 4th of July picnic, one of Mom sewing at the kitchen table, 3 shots of Finn, and one faded picture of my parents in front of this very cabin, the year they bought it, before Valora ever entered the picture. I printed copies, glued them onto a large backing board, and framed them with care. Then I took out the hand-sewn pillow my mom made before her arthritis took her hands. It was stitched in dark green thread. "You belong where love sees you." I debated writing a card. I didn't. I wrapped the pillow and collage in neutral paper, tied it with twine, and placed them both in a box. Then I set the box on the entryway bench, where it sat untouched for the next 2 weeks. In the quiet that followed, memories floated in uninvited. Holidays where I took the group photos but never appeared in them. Graduation dinners where my name wasn't on the program. Birthday cards signed "From all of us," even though I knew Leora hadn't chipped in. Valora used to say, "Sadie's the calm one. She doesn't need all that fuss." I'd let it pass, again and again. Told myself being left out didn't mean I was unloved, that my value wasn't tied to someone remembering to include me in a slideshow or a speech. But it adds up. Little absences pile into a canyon. One evening, about a week before the party, I took Finn for a walk around the ridge behind the cabin. The sun was setting, and the light hit the trees just right, making them look like fire. Finn chased a squirrel and came back breathless, his tail high. I watched him, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of pretending start to crack. When we got back, I sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the packed gift box, and whispered, "Maybe this time they'll see me. Maybe this time I won't have to disappear to be respected." The morning of the party, I loaded the box into the car, clipped Finn's harness on, and turned the key in the ignition. My hands were steady, my breath even. I could have said no, I should have. But something in me, a small, aching hope, still wanted them to choose me without being reminded. That's the last time I ever gave them the benefit of the doubt. They'd taken my name off everything, except the deed. I stood there, still, for a moment after the slap. The sting on my cheek had already dulled to a low hum, like a warning light buzzing in the back of my brain. But what stuck more than the pain was the applause. The polite, hesitant clapping that followed, like a room full of people didn't know whether to console me or congratulate her. That was the moment I stopped waiting for anyone to do the right thing. Finn stayed close as I walked past the white tents, the string lights blinking on as the late afternoon slid toward early evening. I had hoped the sun would linger, but it, too, seemed eager to leave the party early. As I reached the edge of the crowd, a young woman at the welcome table, probably hired for the event, looked up and smiled. "Can I help you find your seat?" she asked, glancing at the clipboard in her hand. I blinked at her. "I already found it," I said quietly, and held up the badge pinned to my chest. "Guest 18, she frowned. "Oh, sorry. We just went off the master list." I nodded and turned toward the drink station, the gift box still tucked carefully under my arm. No one had asked about it. No one had offered to take it. I ended up placing it myself under the table, careful not to let it sit in the sun. Next to the bar, a group of guests laughed loudly. I caught my father's voice in the middle of a story. I didn't stop. I walked toward the photo wall. It had grown since the last time I'd seen it, now bathed in warm golden light from the hanging bulbs overhead. Dozens of photos, printed in glossy full color, framed by pale wood. Kids with ice cream, Christmas mornings, Leora in a white dress at graduation. Valora with her arms around everyone, always center stage. And then I saw the one that sent my pulse racing. It was my mother, my real mother, standing next to the cabin. I recognized the floral blouse, the long braid down her back, but half her face was cropped out, as if someone hadn't noticed, or hadn't cared. They erased her too. I stepped back, pressing my lips together, trying to focus on the sound of Finn's nails tapping the ground as he circled near me. Valora's voice rang out behind me. "Everyone, I'd love to take a moment to show you something truly special." I turned and saw her standing near the food table, lifting a folded piece of cloth from a basket. "This," she announced, "is a precious heirloom, passed down from my mother to me. It's been in our family for decades. We thought today was the perfect occasion to display it." She unfolded the linen. I knew it immediately. It was the same embroidered cloth my mother stitched when I was 17. The thread, a soft hunter green, ran in looping vines along the border, ending with a tiny set of initials in the corner, SW. My breath hitched, but I said nothing. No one noticed. They were all too busy smiling, nodding, admiring Valora's performance. I stood still, feeling the air thicken in my chest. She held the cloth up like a trophy. A symbol of tradition, of endurance, she said. Something that ties us all together. I turned away. The walk to the restroom felt longer than it should have. My heels clicked on the temporary floor tiles they'd laid for the event. I pushed open the bathroom door and stood inside for a minute, not using it, just breathing. When I came back out, Valora was posing for a photo with the cloth draped over her arm. Leora stood beside her, flashing that perfectly symmetrical smile she'd perfected over years of being told she was the image of her mother. Back near the drinks, a centerpiece had tipped over. A cluster of roses and eucalyptus stems leaned half off the table. Without thinking, I walked over and adjusted it, realigning the vase and wiping away a spill with a napkin. "Excuse me," a voice said over my shoulder. I turned to find a woman in pearls and a wide-brimmed hat holding a plastic cup. She gestured toward the lemonade dispenser. "Can I get a refill here?" I stared at her. She stared back, clearly expecting action. "You're catering, right?" she added when I didn't move fast enough. I could feel the blood rush to my ears. I opened my mouth, then closed it. "No," I said after a pause. "I own the house." Her expression faltered. "Oh, well, you looked busy." I didn't answer. I turned away and walked back toward my seat. If you could call it that. It was a folding chair, wedged between the portable restroom and the audio speaker that had been humming a low, distorted buzz all afternoon. Someone had dropped a half-eaten plate of potato salad on the ground nearby. The scent was starting to turn. Finn curled up underneath the chair, pressing against my leg. I reached down, resting my hand on his back. Up front, Leora had taken the mic. "We just want to thank everyone for making today so special," she said brightly. "It means the world to have you here to celebrate our family's journey." Her voice echoed slightly from the speaker beside me. No mention of me. No mention of the house we were all standing in. No acknowledgement of the woman who paid the deposit, who fixed the foundation when it cracked, who stayed behind when everyone else left. I looked toward the dessert table. My gift box was still there, unopened, moved to the side so the brownies could have more room. I pressed my palm against the edge of the table beside me, feeling the rough metal frame, the sticky condensation from a discarded water bottle. You can erase names from photos, I thought. From napkins, from speeches, from lists. I looked down at Finn, his brown eyes steady on mine. But not from title deeds. They didn't realize I'd already started the paperwork. I sat quietly in that metal folding chair, the edge of it cutting faintly into the backs of my thighs. To my left was a hand-washing station buzzing with flies. To my right, the entrance to the portable restroom, its plastic door swinging shut every few minutes with a heavy, thudding finality. A child ran past, nearly clipping my knee. No apology, just laughter as he rejoined a gaggle of kids at the dessert table. Across the yard, I could see Harlan seated at one of the main tables under the canopy, sipping his second glass of tea like nothing had happened, like his daughter hadn't been slapped across the face and then applauded for standing still. No one came to check on me, not even a glance. My chair didn't have my name, just the number 18 again, hand-scrawled in Sharpie on a folded card. I had asked the woman at the welcome table if they had made a mistake earlier, but she just shrugged and said, "Sorry, we went by Valora's list." Of course they did. Finn lay flat against my boots, head on his paws, barely moving. He was the only one who noticed when I shifted my weight, when my fingers began tapping against my thigh. "You okay, hun?" a woman across from me asked, not looking up from her phone. "I'm good," I said. I didn't recognize her. That should have been my first warning about this whole charade. Most of the people here were either extended friends of Valora's or social media acquaintances from her Heart homepage. I'd seen half their faces in her reels. Not one had acknowledged that the house they were standing in belonged to me, the house Valora had just gone live to promote. I could hear her voice carrying from across the lawn, just a few paces from where she stood beneath a ring light, one hand on her hip the other resting lightly on the armrest of a rocking chair I built with my own 2 hands. "This home," she said, her voice butter smooth, "is the beating heart of our family, a space of healing, a symbol of what it means to come together and build something beautiful." Behind her, a guest held up their phone to record her speech. "She's good at this," someone said near me, impressed. "Knows her angles." I swallowed hard, looking at the faint cracks in the patio stones near my feet. I remembered fixing those myself 2 summers ago when the rains had eaten away the edge. Valora had stood by holding a clipboard, filming a before and after clip she never credited me for. I tried to steady my breath, but my heart had other plans. Leora was near the legacy wall now, holding a framed photo for a group of guests. "This one's from my graduation," she said. "Dad drove 6 hours for it, didn't even complain once." Someone asked, "Where's your sister in all these?" Leora gave a tight smile. "Oh, you mean Sadie? She likes to stay out of things." I looked up, meeting her gaze for a fleeting second. She didn't hold it. She looked down instead, repositioning the frame like it had betrayed her. My jaw clenched. I thought about all the birthdays I spent alone when she was in Florida, about the hospital bills I covered when Dad lost his job, the late-night drives to bring her medicine when she lived in that cramped apartment with her first fiancé. And yet here she was, standing 10 feet from a banner that read, "Kalin Family Legacy," rewriting the story without even blinking. Valora passed by my table just then, pausing just long enough to be seen stopping, to be noticed. "Hope you're enjoying the party," she said, voice honeyed. I tilted my head slightly. "You're building a house of lies on land that's not yours." She froze for a split second, then smiled. "That's not a very generous attitude, Sadie." "No," I said evenly, "but it's accurate." She held my gaze longer than I expected. Her eyes flicked to the camera behind her, then back to me. The smile she wore was one she'd practiced, soft edges, warm eyes. But there was something hollow about it now, something that flickered just short of confident. She turned away without another word. I watched her rejoin the crowd, arms open to embrace someone in a floral dress. She slipped right back into her script. Finn let out a soft breath. I reached down and rubbed his side, grateful he couldn't talk. Grateful he didn't ask why I stayed, why I showed up, why I let it go on this long. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened a message thread. Edith Loomis. I typed, "It's happening." Within seconds, the little dots appeared. Her reply was short. "I'm ready. Just say the word." I didn't respond. Not yet. Finn shifted beside me, ears twitching. I whispered, "Not yet, but soon." I stood, brushing off my skirt, walked to the dessert table where the box I'd wrapped sat untouched beneath a pile of mismatched plates and a stack of extra napkins. I lifted it gently, slipping it back under my arm. A guest bumped into me. "Oh, sorry," she chirped. "Didn't see you there." Story of my life. I nodded politely and kept walking. Past the photo wall, past the clipboard woman, past the string lights and the chalkboard that said, "Welcome, Kalin family." None of it was real. Not the speeches, not the photos, not the curated hashtags or the fake smiles. What was real was the wood grain on the beams I had sanded myself, the title that sat in my fireproof box, the bank statements, the receipts. They didn't realize I'd already started the paperwork, but they would. The house wasn't the gift. They were the intruders, and I was done letting them redecorate my life. The sun had dipped just enough to cast long shadows across the yard. Most guests were chatting in small clusters, plates half full, drinks in hand. A few kids kicked around an empty soda can near the gravel path. The air held that brief stillness just before dusk, when the sky hasn't decided whether to hold on to the day or let it fall into night. I was standing near the back edge of the tent, pretending to be absorbed in a potted fern Valora had set up for ambiance, when I saw them approach. Leora walked ahead, crisp folder in hand, the kind you'd see at a bank. Valora followed behind her, smiling like a woman who believed she'd already won. Harlan brought up the rear, slow and silent, carrying 2 plastic cups of tea, one of them clearly for me. Sadie, Valora said sweetly, as if the slap earlier had never happened. We were hoping to steal a moment. I didn't move, but I didn't run either. I had already known this was coming. I just didn't expect them to be so bold. We've been thinking, she began, stepping into the circle of string lights, that with everything you've done, this beautiful home, your stability, it's such a powerful example of love and generosity. And what better way to carry that forward than to secure a future for the kids? Leora held the folder like it was wrapped in ribbon. It's just a little formality, she added, offering a smile I used to fall for. You'd still be part of everything, obviously. Emotionally, you're a cornerstone. My jaw clenched, but I didn't speak. Instead, I gestured toward the nearby table, and they followed. Valora slid into the seat across from me, the lights catching the shimmer on her blouse. Harlan didn't sit. He stood nearby, holding both teas like a peace offering no one asked for. Leora opened the folder. Inside was a pre-drafted deed transfer, my cabin, reassigned to Leora and her children, effective immediately. The justification. Family legacy preservation. Valora tapped the signature line with a manicured nail. It's just paperwork, sweetheart. You'll always be a part of us. I stared at the folder, read every word, slowly. I wanted them to see that I wasn't overwhelmed, wasn't flustered. I wanted them to know I was cataloging this moment, archiving their entitlement in my memory. After a long silence, Valora leaned in slightly. You've had your quiet time. It's time to step aside gracefully. I closed the folder carefully, slid it back across the table. I will never sign a lie dressed as legacy, I said, my voice low and even. Leora blinked, the smile on her face twitching just enough to show the crack. You always have to be dramatic, she muttered. This is why things never move forward. Valora's smile hardened, but she kept her tone even. We just thought you'd want to give back, Sadie. I mean, you've had more than enough time with this place. I looked to Harlan, who hadn't said a word. He finally sighed and said quietly, Sadie, don't make this bigger than it is. That got me. I stood up, looked at all 3 of them. You already did. For a second, no one spoke. The murmur of the party faded into the background. Somewhere nearby, someone dropped a fork. A baby cried. I turned and walked away. Didn't look back. Finn caught up with me in a flash, trotting at my side like he'd been waiting for this cue all evening. The air was cooler now, the scent of grilled meat replaced by the faint bite of pine and dew. Once we were out of earshot, past the last row of cars parked along the drive, I pulled out my phone. I tapped Marisol's name, typed a short message. I need a notary, a witness, everything we discussed. The response came back seconds later. Already lined up. Just send me the timestamp. As we reached the side steps of the house, I looked up at the porch light glowing over the doorway. It flickered slightly, a bulb going out maybe, or maybe just nerves. I opened the door, let Finn in first. The interior of the house was quiet. Too quiet after the forced festivities outside. I placed my bag on the console table and stood still for a long moment. This isn't just a house, I said aloud, more to the walls than to myself. It's the last place I haven't been erased. Then I took a breath, straightened my shoulders, and started planning what would come next. They pushed me into silence, but they didn't expect I'd write the final word. The morning after the party was strangely quiet. No texts, no emails, not even a recycled inspirational quote from Valora's Instagram stories. Just birds outside the window and the slow drip of the coffee pot. Finn curled up at the foot of the couch, ears occasionally twitching, but even he seemed to sense the calm was temporary. I poured a mug of strong coffee, black, and stepped out onto the porch. The deck boards creaked gently under my weight as I settled into the chair by the railing. I'd stained it myself last fall, another thing no one remembered. I sat there, watching the sunlight stretch through the trees, steam curling above the rim of my cup. In my lap, the folder Marisol had helped me put together. Every document lined up, signed, reviewed, and ready. Eviction notice, witness affidavit, title deed, certification. A cover letter addressed to the county clerk. This wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a threat. It was procedure. At 9:15 sharp, I drove into town with Finn in the passenger seat, his head sticking slightly out the window. The courthouse wasn't busy, a typical sleepy Tuesday in a small mountain city. Marisol was already waiting on the steps when I pulled in. "You look like someone walking into a deposition," she said, handing me a manila envelope. I gave a small smile. "Feels more like I'm closing a chapter." Inside, the clerk barely blinked as she stamped and logged everything. No questions, no raised eyebrows, just the rhythmic thump of official ink hitting paper. By 10:03, it was filed. We left without ceremony. Just the sound of gravel underfoot and the knowledge that something permanent had shifted. Later that afternoon, I checked my phone and saw a message from Valora. "This isn't necessary. We can talk." I didn't reply. An hour later, she posted a quote on her story feed. "Some people only feel powerful when they're hurting others. Guard your peace." With a background of lavender and eucalyptus, of course. I turned off notifications. The next day, I came home from the market to find a sleek black SUV parked in my driveway. My stomach tensed immediately. Finn growled low from the back seat. I parked just off the gravel and walked toward the house slowly. There, on the porch, stood Leora, wearing a blazer and sunglasses, and a man in a checked button-down shirt holding a leather-bound folder. A realtor. As I approached, the man turned to me with a practiced smile. "Oh, hello. You must be the tenant?" Leora's smile froze. I looked at him, deadpan. "I'm the owner, and you're standing on private property without my permission." His eyes darted between us. I was just asked to assess the property for potential listing. I apologize if—" I turned to Leora. "You didn't think I'd come back this early?" She took off her sunglasses slowly. "Sadie, relax. We were just exploring options. Dad said you were considering—" "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't put this on him. You had no right to bring someone here. This isn't your project. It's my home." The agent took a cautious step back. "I'm gonna— just wait by the car." Leora exhaled, trying to keep her tone measured. "You're being emotional. And you're trespassing." I pulled out my phone and dialed Marisol. "I need the sheriff," I said. "Now." It took less than 15 minutes. Deputy Clark was someone I recognized from community meetings. He walked up the drive calmly, papers already in hand. "Ms. Weston," he nodded at me, then looked at Leora. "Ma'am, I need you to step off the property." She laughed dryly. "Are you serious? We're just discussing options." He didn't blink. "Exploring's over. This property is legally owned, with full title under Miss Weston. You've been served notice and you've ignored it. Any further action without her consent is a violation." Leora's eyes flared. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Valora, still sitting in the SUV, stared straight ahead and never got out. I walked up the steps, past them, and entered the house without another word. Finn stayed on the porch, watching them go. By sunset, they were gone. That night, I printed a simple sign on my home printer. "Private property, no trespassing." I laminated it, nailed it to the post at the start of the gravel drive. Then I changed the locks. I replaced the code on the security system. I walked every inch of the house, room to room, window to door, double-checking everything. For dinner, I made roasted vegetables and a piece of salmon. Nothing fancy. Finn got a scoop of his favorite turkey and rice mix. I sat at the dining table, just me and the sound of the wind pressing against the windows. I took a bite, chewed slowly, and smiled. Not the kind of smile you wear for a camera, not the kind that says, "Look how far I've come," just a quiet one. "I'm not alone," I said aloud. "I'm just unbothered now. If they wanted legacy, I'd show them what truth really leaves behind." It started the way storms do. Quiet, with a single ripple. 3 days had passed since the deputy asked Leora to leave my porch, and Valora refused to step out of her SUV. Since then, I had spent my time trimming dead hydrangeas by the porch, organizing the kitchen pantry, updating the deed file to a cloud folder. I moved through the cabin like a woman tending to something sacred, not because I was hiding, but because I was waiting. At 6:48 that morning, my phone buzzed, a message from a number I didn't recognize. "You should see this." There was no name, no photo, just a link. I hesitated. My gut had learned not to trust anything that came without context, but something in me, maybe the same part that stood through that slap and didn't flinch, clicked it anyway, read it. Thread title: Stepmom slaps her, stepsister claps. This was a family reunion. The video was only 27 seconds long. Valora's voice floated over the footage. "It's not like she needs it. No husband, no kids." Then my face, calm. My words: "This house is mine." Then the slap, clear, undeniable, and loud. Then the applause. My jaw clenched. My hand went still on Finn's fur. He lifted his head, sensing the stillness in me that wasn't peace. I scrolled. The comments section was already well past 4,000 replies. This is what financial abuse looks like. She hit her, and they clapped? Who just sits there and eats steak while their daughter's being humiliated? Find me Sadie. I'll buy whatever she's selling. I didn't smile, but my shoulders dropped, just slightly. I didn't post. I didn't reply. I just watched. By noon, it was trending. Local news picked it up by evening. Family conflict sparks online outrage after slap video goes viral. That afternoon, a message pinged into my inbox. Instagram, Carmen Rose, the catering assistant from the welcome table. She had barely spoken to me that day, but now her message read, "I didn't clap. I froze. I'm sorry. I was the one who posted it. I had to." I couldn't sleep. I read it twice. My thumbs hovered above the screen, unsure what to say. In the end, I typed, "Thank you for seeing it." That night, Valora posted a video. Her makeup was soft, lighting golden, voice trembling just enough to pass. "We were just trying to hold on to the love in our family," she said, clasping her hands in her lap. "Sometimes things get messy, but everything we did was in the name of unity." The comments turned brutal in under 3 minutes. She slapped her and said she had no family. That's not unity. Trying to rebrand abuse isn't healing, it's manipulation. Sadie deserves justice, not a peace treaty signed in denial. An hour later, someone leaked screenshots, bank records, my deed, a copy of the cabin title with only my name. By the next morning, 2 of Valora's sponsors had dropped her. Heart Home's YouTube channel was disabled for review. Lyora's latest vlog about legacy values had its comments turned off. Her beauty box subscription service posted a note. "We are suspending all influencer partnerships pending investigation." I didn't celebrate. I sat on the porch, mug in hand, and let the cold air wash over me. I had no interest in revenge. I just wanted the truth to stand. On the 4th day, a thick white envelope arrived by certified mail. Return address: The Athena Project, legal advocacy for women silenced in family systems. Inside was a letter. "Dear Ms. Weston, we saw the footage, but more importantly, we reviewed the documents that surfaced. Your case is a textbook example of coercive legacy erasure and financial boundary violations. If you wish to pursue a full legal audit and protective claim, we are prepared to assist. Pro bono." I read it twice, then folded it neatly. For the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like the outsider. That evening, I walked to the old woodpile out back. The air had cooled again, dusk painting shadows across the field. I built a fire in the pit, slow and steady, no rush. In my hand, a stack of things that no longer served me, thank you notes signed by people who never meant them. Unused place cards with my name scribbled on the back in fading ink. A photo of Valora holding Leora at Easter, with my mother's name scratched off the back. One by one, I let them drop into the flames, not out of anger, out of ritual, out of reclamation. Finn lay nearby, eyes closed, chest rising steady. As the fire crackled and dimmed, I whispered aloud, not to anyone in particular, just to the wind, I didn't win the war, they just lost their grip on the lie. That Monday morning, I put on a blazer that hadn't seen daylight since my last speaking event 3 years ago. It still fit, snug around the shoulders, with a thread loose at the cuff I never bothered to fix. I tucked a copy of the original deed into my leather portfolio, then folded and placed the letter from Edith neatly on top. Finn paced near the door while I tied my shoes. He always knew when I was about to do something final. Edith pulled up right at 8:00, punctual as ever. She didn't honk. She didn't text. She just sat in the car, engine running, calm as a stone in a slow river. I slid into the passenger seat and nodded once. That was all we needed. The courthouse wasn't busy. A few folks in jeans and dusty boots stood in line for title transfers or marriage licenses. We waited quietly. The clerk behind the counter had soft curls and a name tag that read, Yvette. Edith spoke first, her tone even and efficient. We're here to submit final confirmation of property ownership under Ms. Sadie Weston. Here are the deed history, certified proof of financial transfers, notarized statements, and supporting documentation of contested claims. Yvette flipped through the folder, page by page. Her eyes paused over a few items. She looked up at me, then back down. Looks clear to me, she said. Then, with a practiced motion, she stamped the front page. That's it, Yvette said. You're all set. Edith touched my arm, just for a second. No words, just grounding. We left the building together, sunlight pooling in patches across the marble floor. Outside, the wind picked up, tugging gently at the hem of my coat. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. But something deep in my chest loosened. 2 days later, Harlan showed up at the cabin alone. No text, no call, just the sound of his car crunching down the gravel path around 10:15 in the morning. I was on the back porch when I heard the door open and close softly. I stayed where I was. I didn't need to greet him. He moved through the house with the kind of silence that only men raised in emotional droughts can perfect. A few drawers opened. A suitcase rolled lightly across the hardwood. I heard the fridge door open, then close again. A bottle of water taken. Nothing else. Then the footsteps stopped at the back doorway. I didn't turn around. He stood there for a moment. Maybe 5 seconds, maybe 20. Then he let out a sigh, that tired kind fathers have when they're about to lie to your face but decide not to bother. He didn't say a word. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I didn't know. Not, I tried. He just walked out. I listened to the car pull away until the sound disappeared behind the tree line. That was our last conversation. Silence. The next morning, I heard Valora had posted a new video. Of course she did. Perfectly lit, muted lavender tones. Soft piano music in the background. She looked straight into the camera and said, "We're moving forward as a family. We've learned so much through this experience, and while some people choose bitterness, we choose growth." I didn't watch the whole thing. I didn't have to. I already knew the playbook. Smile, spin, spiritualize. But the internet didn't bite this time. Comments flooded under the video before it was taken down. She hit her stepdaughter in public and expected applause. This isn't growth, it's gaslighting. No healing without accountability, Valora. Her remaining sponsors quietly disappeared over the next few days. A blog that once published her 7 Steps to Spiritual Legacy guide removed all links to her brand. The Instagram comments turned off. YouTube page marked inactive. Engagement plummeted. Meanwhile, Lyora tried to pivot, posted a tweet. Sometimes those closest to you are the first to betray. But I won't let that stop me from shining. She deleted it 3 hours later. No new content followed. Her podcast went dark. No brand deals. No QA sessions. Just static. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I went to the cabin's hallway, pulled out a frame I had been saving since my mother's death. Inside, I placed 3 things: a photo of Mom standing in front of the unfinished cabin, the original deed with my name clear as day, and a small note in my handwriting. You were never invisible. You just had to stop asking to be seen. I hung it near the front door. Later that week, I mailed 1 copy of the full legal case, cleaned, labeled, indexed, to the Athena Project. On the envelope, I wrote, in case another daughter needs proof. The rest of the documents, I burned them, not out of spite, just closure. I stood by the fire pit, tossing each paper in slowly: tax filings, emails from Valora, Lyora's printed speeches, a copy of the Kalin legacy plan she'd tried to pass off as a family heirloom project. I let it all go. Finn sat beside me, tail brushing the dirt, eyes on the embers. Some things deserve ash. I didn't win the war, they just lost their grip on the lie. And in the space they left behind, something else came in. Quiet. Not the kind that used to press against my ribs like a weight, but the kind that settles into a room and makes you want to stay a little longer. It had been 2 weeks since the last car drove away. No more knocks, no more deliveries. No, "Sadie, can we talk?" voicemails. Just the sound of birds in the morning and the occasional thump of Finn's tail hitting the floor when he stretched in his sleep. That morning, I woke up without flinching. No email waiting with some half-hearted apology. No headline asking if I'd speak to a podcast about toxic family legacies. No more messages from old high school classmates pretending they always knew I was the strong one. I made coffee. I let Finn outside, the door creaking open just enough to let in the early breeze. He wandered toward the trees, sniffing out whatever mystery had landed overnight. I didn't check my phone. I didn't open the news. I stood on the porch, barefoot, letting the chill climb up my ankles. Silence used to ache. Now it breathes. Later that morning, I cleared out the drawer in the hallway that held old receipts, faded coupons, a collection of pens that hadn't worked in years. In the back, I found a worn envelope I didn't recognize at first. The handwriting on it was loopy, slanted to the right, like someone who'd written without rushing. It was from Mrs. Delaney, our old neighbor down the ridge. She'd passed away 5 years ago, and I hadn't realized she'd sent something before she left. I opened it slowly. Inside was a photo, my mother, standing in front of the cabin when it was still half-built. The roof was unfinished. The porch beams were raw. But she stood proud, hand resting on her hip, eyes squinting into the sun. On the back of the photo, written in that same loopy script, "This is for Sadie, so she always has somewhere to be real." I sat down on the floor, right there in the hallway. Not from grief, not from exhaustion, but from understanding. She always knew. I framed the photo that afternoon and placed it above the doorway. The light from the window hit it just right, the image glowing with a softness I couldn't describe. In my bedroom drawer was a letter I had written months ago, addressed to Valora. Typed, proofed, rewritten 3 times. I read it once more before letting it go. "I'm not bitter. I'm just done pretending your kindness wasn't currency. I see now what I used to excuse, and I don't need you to explain it. I just needed to name it." I folded it in half, then again, and I burned it. No spectacle, just the quiet hiss of paper giving up the ghost. There were things I chose to keep. The embroidered cloth my mother made. I folded it neatly and placed it inside a cedar box in the living room. The nameplate from the party, the one that read "Guest number 18", I dropped it into a small glass jar, labeled it with a Sharpie. Proof I was never invited. It sat next to the bookshelf like a souvenir from another version of me. The deed stayed under my bed, locked in a fireproof safe. Not because I feared losing it, but because I knew I never would. The anger, it didn't vanish, but it softened. It no longer needed to stand at the door and bark. By the time the sun began to fall behind the trees, I had swept the porch, watered the rosemary bush, and opened every window in the house. I didn't start a podcast. I didn't give interviews. I didn't post a long caption about healing or betrayal or growth. Instead, I moved a few rocking chairs to the front porch and brewed a pot of coffee. That Saturday morning, I left the porch light on a little longer. A few local women came by, some I'd known in passing, others I didn't know at all. We sat, we talked, or we didn't. Sometimes silence is the conversation people need most. There was no name for it, no official group, just a porch, a dog, a circle of chairs, and the truth. Sometimes peace doesn't arrive with an apology. Sometimes it just stays when the noise finally leaves. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are the ones behind closed doors, with people who call themselves family. But silence isn't peace, and boundaries aren't betrayal. What would you do if your name was erased from your own story? If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. More true, powerful, and deeply human stories are coming your way. Let's talk in the comments.